Welcome to the HR on the Offensive podcast, brought to you by LACEr Partners. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the latest HR on the Offensive podcast. It's me, Chris Howard, joining you once again on this Thursday that we release our podcasts. And today, we're doing a build today. Last year, 2023, we're now into 2024, I did a really interesting podcast with Liz Bailey, who works in our change team. And it was all around culture and how it was around culture, but it was around energy levels as well. So how that differs, how that changes from an individual perspective. What we wanted to do today is to, as I said, build on that and really look at it partially from an individual perspective, but maybe lean a little bit more into like the organisational side as well. Liz isn't around today, so I have corralled one of her fellow change management experts to join me as my co-host today. And we're both in the same room as well, so that's always nice. And it's Jess Herniman. Jess, you all right?
Hello, happy to be here. My first podcast.
Your first one?
First for me, yeah. Been at LACEr for 5 years, but first for me, so happy to be here.
He almost said that as if it was through gritted teeth.
No, very happy about it.
Haven't you invited me on the podcast before?
Yeah, maybe it is.
So to join us and to talk about energy and how that can impact organisations, but also as I said, from an organisational point of view, we have our friends who work at Dragonfish. We've got Niall and Andree, who are returnees to the podcast. How are you doing, Niall?
Very well, thank you. Really great to see you all again, or talk to you all again.
Yeah, really, really good to see you and talk to you as well. And hello, Andree, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thanks. It's lovely to be back.
Yeah, lovely to be back. Right now, we're going to delve into this kind of energy and all of that sort of stuff. But before we do that, as is my new tradition, I'm going to stop calling it a new tradition soon because we'll get into the swing of it. But we have a fundamentally different question. So completely random, not related to HR, little bit of an icebreaker. My question for today, which I'm going to pose to all three, including my co-host, and I'm going to let Jess, you go first, so it gives Niall and Andree some time to think up their answer. Now, the question I've got for you. So I think it's Queen Mary has just had her doll's house that's come on display. And so there's lots of miniatures. So it's all in the press at the moment. There's lots of miniatures that have come out. My question to you, Jess, is if you could have one item that you own, any item whatsoever, that you get miniaturized and placed into Queen Mary's house, is her little doll's house, what would it be? What one item would you miniaturize? Anything you like. Would it be clothing? Would it be jewellery? What would you go for?
What's the purpose of her to have it? Just the
it's
doll.
Just a bit of fun.
What about like a West Ham?
You can have something West Ham.
It's so anti, like West Ham towel, because it's so different from the Royals, and it couldn't be like on the other end of the spectrum. I'm going that.
So you're going to go for miniaturising a West Ham towel.
Yeah, so the doll can do it.
Interesting. Andree, please tell me you can beat that.
Oh,
I wonder if I can. I actually did see it on the news this morning. I even saw they had a really miniature Coleman mustard, which was really, really tiny. It was amazing. What I would miniaturise, actually she's fairly miniature already, is my Cocker Spaniel dog, because she is crazy and I suspect she would run around that house and make it filthy. So I'd pretty much like that to happen.
Brilliant. And Niall, just to complete the set before we start talking about energy, culture and productivity, what are you putting into Queen Mary's little tiny dollhouse?
Well, I don't know why my brain went there. It must be January, it's on my mind. But I thought about a mini gym, actually, should be in there, with all sorts of yoga studio. I just want to see a mini gym in there. So that's where I went, Chris. That's where I went.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So we're taking a little mini gym. And I imagine, given how old that doll's house would be, I don't think they're going to have any sort of weights or anything like that in there. So quite interesting indeed. Okay, so let's get into the nub of it. Jess, I'm going to let you ask a question if you want to. Actually, I don't know if you want to build on the conversations that we've had and just on the pod itself about, from an organisational perspective, this idea of how energy levels differ.
Yes, something that I'm very interested in, actually. I think it's quite an exciting topic, and it's a lot to do with change and organisational culture. So I think it was interesting for me to obviously listen to the pod with yourself, Chris, and Liz. And I think that, as you mentioned, was more focused on your individual energy management. So about understanding your energy lows, or I know that Liz hated that word, but your energy lows. So when you're least creative, most creative, how you can boost your productivity by, going on runs and kind of implementing or setting up chats with people throughout the day to understand your energy management. So I found it all very interesting. And I know you guys linked a lot to creativity. And I think it would be good to understand from Niall and Andree more about how, from a cultural, organisational point of view, how you can actually manage energy management as well as productivity. So not from an individual point of view, but actually how can you increase energy levels, I guess, and as a result, productivity from a cultural lens.
I love the leap from individual energy to how do you look at it from an organisational perspective. Our research and experience would show that organizations that are high performing, or organizations that are sustainable, they're winning over time, put it that way, and they're going to win for the future. They tend to have created a blueprint or a framework around what they stand for, why they exist, what they're trying to achieve, and how they want to work with each other, how they expect to work with each other and with their customers and with partners. It's a house, it's a framework to build the house theme that allows people to thrive and perform, or increase the chances that people that want to be in that house or in that environment can thrive. So for us, actually shaping a blueprint that people can connect with is very, very important as a starting point for thinking about how do you create energy at scale, which results in something sustainably productive. So that's a starting point.
Yeah, and I think creating that sort of level of positive energy within an organisation stems a lot from leadership and the tone that they set. And I think having that framework, having that purpose that everybody is a shared purpose that everybody can get behind, and also that vision, but people are understanding the role they play in that. So real clarity about actually them helping to deliver upon that creates that sense of sort of energy. And, energy is contagious, right? And if a leader is in an organisation is energetic and positive, and that there's a ripple effect in any organisation, and that will reach down into teams and managers doing that within their team so that the culture then begins to thrive.
Do you know what's really interesting on that, Andree? You just talking, and I'll stick with you if this is all right. You were just talking about the impact then that leaders play. How much more important, or how pivotal is that, and being able to buy almost off of that energy from leaders, as opposed to just your surroundings and general colleagues? Like, what do you think the balance is? Where's leaders' sort of role in helping to try and foster and drive that kind of levels of energy, as opposed to just, well, I've got a collaborative group of people that I'm working with, and I'm sounding a bit sort of like trying to be trendy, like by vibe, like talking about vibing, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think energy comes from all parts of the organisation, right? We all need to look in different directions for energy. We need to see our leaders demonstrating energy, being positive, but actually the people we come into contact with on a day-to-day basis are our managers and our colleagues, frankly. And, we need to have that energy. So, whenever we're sort of embarking on a culture transformation programme, the role of managers and leaders is really, really important in creating the team environment where that energy will thrive. And the energy comes to life, when people understand their contribution, that team's contribution, and people are celebrating success, and there's that sense of energy around that celebrating success in driving that forward.
So I think, Andree, you touched upon a couple of things there. So you've got your leadership obviously setting the tone, and then you touched upon your line managers. And I just want to delve a little bit more in the line manager's role, because obviously, especially when you're thinking about a large organisation, your leaders sit right at the top. Not many people really come into contact with them on their daily basis. And in my opinion, that line manager role is actually the ones that kind of create the culture, because people do come into contact with them a lot. So what are some of the ways in which you can ensure that your line management are aligned to your leadership, so they are creating the culture that the leaders actually set from the top?
I think increasingly we see that expectation on managers to not just rely on leaders to talk about our vision and purpose, but people want to see that and feel that on an everyday basis. So I think we need to enable managers, people leaders, managers to be more confident about how they can talk about those elements and what it means in their day-to-day. So it's something about enabling and training and investing in time in that. But I also think I'm a huge believer that alignment is also about objectives and goals. And those are they're often seen as mechanisms for reward or mechanisms for control, not mechanisms to unlock potential or unlock the best that people can bring. And I think we need to have a rebrand and a focus on how great goal setting and objective setting can really empower people to unlock their energy and do their best work. So often we see teams setting objectives in isolation or doing a poor job of actually talking about objectives and how do they all fit together and where do I play in supporting those goals? Because it's missions that really galvanize people, and clear goals and objectives, role clarity massively helps. Our research shows and our experience shows it. So just a few thoughts about how we can help managers create better energy in ways that we often put to one side or think about for other reasons.
That's brilliant. And Andree, I don't want to cut you out of this. So anything, do you want to build on that from your perspective?
Just building on that, I think culture comes to life through conversation, right? And the more we have conversations around culture in teams, the more authentic those conversations are, the more people can connect with it in a real way. I think, sometimes, we often say, there's no point having values and behaviours or a vision or a purpose on a wall. It's actually about that becoming a regular conversation and being a natural conversation that you have rather than something that's forced.
Yeah, absolutely right. Spot on. I couldn't agree more. And quite often I've worked in organisations where those kind of the cultures, the values. I mean, I'm a marketing person, and we are having to extol the virtuals, our brand values as an entity. And sometimes you see the top down kind of approach of this is what it is. But without that levels of communication and the belief in it, it just doesn't really go anywhere. I wanted to just move into a conversation that we actually had, I think it was when we were originally talking about running this podcast, and it's around, we talked about moments of energy. So I'll go back to you, Niall, and then perhaps Andree, and then actually get any thoughts from you, Jess, as well. You are a co-host, but also I like to just drag you into the debate as well. But we talked about moments of energy, and I think this is a really interesting debate because you can't be on it all the time. Like, we can't all be at the peak of our powers. And we spoke about this as from an individual perspective, but just from a business and a cultural perspective, can I get some thoughts about, it is okay to, I guess, recognize that we have these periods where we're not operating at our optimum. And sometimes it's more incumbent on individuals and businesses to recognize that and then deal with that really help to drive productivity. So just some thoughts, Niall, just kick it off with you on this idea of these moments of energy and how do you try and maintain positive energy for as long as possible, but recognizing that we're not going to be on it all the time.
We all know that we're not straight line as human beings. We've got physical health, mental health. We're responding to things going on in the world all the time in our lives, at work. So yeah, we're not straight line. So we all agree with that. I think, what can we do to help people manage their energy better themselves at work is, talked about this earlier, but create an environment where you give people as much control as possible to be able to know when they do their best work, so long as we're not letting other people down, that we've got some flex, that we're trusted. Our latest research really shows how important feeling trusted and valued is for high performing cultures. But there's always that tension between empowerment and control and accountability. How do we get that right? But I think as humans, we perform best when we're clear on the goal, when we've given flexibility to and within certain parameters to get that done, and that we feel trusted and valued in our contributions. And, it's talked about a lot, psychological safety, but it's about having open conversations. It's not just about creating an environment and leadership. It's also about people talking to each other and getting to know each other. And that is all, and giving each other feedback is important. It's often forgotten, I think, in the conversation about psychological safety, how important feedback is, because then you build trust and mutual respect. So, and that links to our energy. So just a few thoughts there, building the environment theme. Andree, curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think from a team perspective, it's really about understanding each other at a deeper level. I've recently recruited a new senior consultant, and one of the first things he told me was that he works best from 12 at night to 2 in the morning. Well, that was so anti what I am. So I'm much more a 5:30 in the morning till an 8 in the morning. So it's about appreciating people on a different level and really understanding that, we're all different, right? Our energy levels are all different and they're at different points. I do believe, however, that there is a sense that there's a need in organisations for collective energy, and that collective energy is around coming together and collaborating. When I see us as a consultancy, where I see us at our best, it's when we all come together to collaborate on something and work on it, co-create something together. And I've seen that in our clients as well, that sense of co-creating something, whether that's a set of values and behaviours, or whether that's co-creating a new purpose, that sense of coming together to do something. You have this massive collective energy that enables you to do absolutely brilliant work.
Yep, absolutely. And that then drives things like innovation. I'm just going to park that just for a second, though, because I don't want to keep you out of this, Jess.
No, of course. I think, all of those things that Andree and Niall just said, especially the understanding people. That was what I was thinking of, understanding the people you are working with from a deep level so you can collaborate. I just wanted to add in, I think for me personally, the best cultures I've worked in and which have created me to feel most myself and therefore most positive, which creates positive energy, are ones that allow me to be comfortable with making mistakes. And I think that comes down to trust. And I think it's really important to enable the people that you work with or the people that work for you to make mistakes, because that's when people actually they can take risks more, they can be more creative, and they can innovate more because they're not actually afraid that it goes wrong. And I think that really links to productivity and innovation as well.
Yeah, and as Neil said, you've got that kind of that psychological safety, don't you? Because you feel comfortable and you feel like you are able to fail fast. I want to move us a little bit onto innovation. And I'm going to keep the question nice and broad. I'll start with you, Andree, and then we'll go to Neil. And then if you want to chip in again, Jess, you can as well. How do you see energy helping to drive innovation? And just for context of the listener, we obviously do pre-prep for these podcasts. And we had a chat earlier in the week, the four of us, around this idea of sometimes you get some people like myself, I really feed, when I'm talking about innovation, I really feed off of being other people, other ideas physically in a room sometimes. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts around that link to innovation and energy, Andree, and then how that also impacts productivity too.
So I've seen it on two sides, I think. I've seen where in organisations where there's been lots of energy, but it's very much personal energy and personal passion. And that can be detrimental in many ways, because actually you get your passion projects. So you have people within an organisation going off and doing innovation in lots of different places, but actually they're not being framed through the lens of actually we're innovating through our vision and where we're going and what's important and our priorities. So I've seen that side of it. But I've also seen in other organisations how collective energy enables people to innovate in a way that brings people together, gets the best ideas, gets diversity of thinking in a room. So people are energetic around other people's ideas, and that helps to make those ideas even stronger.
I'm thinking at the minute about how important the customer is in innovation. And I think the more organisations think of themselves as solving problems for the world, and that's solving problems for customers, whoever their kind of right customers are, I think that is where the energy comes to unlock innovation, not to achieve some internal targets or KPIs, but ultimately about solving problems. That's where we've cracked. Look at the pandemic and the speed at which the big pharma organizations work with their supply chains to solve a problem that needed to be solved at pace. Turnaround times that were 10 times faster than a normal go-to-market on a major vaccine. That was because a problem was acute problem, needed to be solved for the world, and brought people together. So I think starting with the customer, the most inspiring, energetic workplaces I think we visit are the ones where the customer is evident. They're on the walls. The quotes are there. The brands are there. The projects that have been delivered for them are evident. So that's there for a reason, because they're proud of those problems that they've solved. So I think there's something about connecting to the customer, and that unlocks energy. And I also think being really clear about how important those problems are, whether it's just moving people from A to B in transport or giving people a great coffee experience, whatever that is, it matters.
Yeah, I love that. Jess?
So, as you were both talking, I was thinking there's almost two elements of this, and they both sit under purpose. I think you've got your organisational purpose, what you're trying to achieve as an organisation. Then you've almost got your project and what you're working on as a project at the time, that purpose. And you can't just have one purpose that sits overarching across your whole organisation. You almost need different purposes, visions to allow everyone to work towards that same goal. So it might be within a team, it might be within, if we consultant, a client team, a work stream, and then your overall purpose. And I think that's important to enable people to always work to the same goal.
I think that's spot on, Jess. In fact, I think a lot of organisations just think there's one purpose, which is the organisational purpose, and we must get everyone to understand it and connect with it and celebrate it. But actually, organisational purpose has to connect with your work purpose, the role that we all have, because there's purpose in that, creating podcasts that help spread the words. Every single part of an organisation making a difference, then to the individual purpose. And that's where you've got the kind of, if you can get individual purpose, what I'm passionate about, linked to my work, linked to the organisation, that's the holy grail, is trying to create a place where that clicks into place. The unbroken connection of why is one way of thinking about it.
When we spoke previously about this, we talked about any examples of companies that are doing this well. So getting those different almost layers of purpose well would be really interesting. I'd love to get from you guys any examples of where this is done well, where organizations, or even from an innovation perspective, where are organizations getting that? Andree, you talked about the alignment between, rather than people going off into different places to do innovation, it's actually coming together to collaborate a bit more. Have you guys got any examples of where it's done well that you can think of, that you can share with our lovely listeners?
Let's start with, I suppose, the power of co-creation. So I think there's something for me in co-creation, creating energy, and I think that's really important. And we've seen that across many clients where we've been doing values and behaviours work, where we've tried to adopt a very inclusive approach, because we know that when you want to land values and behaviours in an organisation, they have to be shaped by the people who are actually going to be behaving in that way. So we've taken that across things like at the National Trust, where actually for the first time ever, we worked with them to involve both staff and volunteers in shaping and co-creating values and behaviours. And that created a level of energy across the organisation that actually started to break down sort of the differences between staff and volunteers, and to bring those two groups much closer together. And it also enabled them to sort of work towards the purpose, so that everybody had one shared purpose that they were working towards, but it was manifested differently within teams. So that's one good example, I suppose, of the power of co-creation and energy. Neil?
When you're talking about innovation, Chris, I think it's really interesting to see organisations in lots of different environments. We see it a lot in engineering, manufacturing, science, technology organisations, that it's teams bringing their skills together, respecting each other's skills and collaborating with clear goals. That's where energy is unlocked. But it happens in different sectors in different ways. So we very proud to work with the Savoy on helping them redefine their vision, building on a very strong heritage. They're a really good example where they celebrate the extraordinary people that work there, and they really elevate the colleague as being at the heart of the guest experience, and therefore building pride in elevating your people and respecting your people enables people to innovate in all sorts of ways. If you've ever been to Savoy, they've got some amazing, I don't go to Savoy very often, but I love working with them. I would love to stay there more often, but they have these amazing flower displays, and they're always innovating and changing that. They're always changing the themes and the layouts, even though they're respecting the heritage at the same time. So different roles are innovating in small ways all the time, because they put colleagues really at the heart of their purpose and their ambition. So innovation is unlocked in all sorts of ways. But definitely putting people at the heart is key.
So I'm going to ask a more negative question. Well, not more negative, but maybe a different slant on what we've been talking about. So I guess if there is anyone listening to this who might be experiencing low energy for whatever type of reason, obviously it's a difficult time for a few industries at the moment, what advice would you give? I know we've spoken about purpose and collaboration, but anything beyond that, advice you would give to those people to actually try and turn it around and to increase the positive energy throughout the organisation?
So negative energy, I think it can be quite detrimental. I've experienced going into organisations where it can take just one person's negative energy to bring the whole place down. So it's about, it's about actually understanding that person, understanding where they're at, understanding why their energy levels are low, really being able to bring that energy up to understand, to take them to a different place, I suppose. And also them understanding, because often they don't understand the impact that they're having on other people, which is really, really important. So understanding the impact that those people are having through that negative energy.
I think that's spot on, Andree. I think perspective is always so key, isn't it? Helping people look at things from different perspectives helps change how we feel about it, which changes how we show up and the actions we take. So I do think there's a risk that people try to use positivity too much. It's also okay for things not to be okay and to talk about it, but you have to move through it and say, well, okay, well, they could be worse. How do we compare? Let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's unlock a different way of thinking about this. So mindsets are so critical. Mindsets and data helps with that. Actually, sometimes you need perspective. Let's look objectively at this, not just how we feel about it, but let's look objectively about it. And, let's look at others who have been through this and come out the other side and been even more successful. There's always ways that you can reframe, use perspective to help unlock and sometimes negative energy, moving away from something is as important motivation as pulling towards something. So sometimes being in a difficult spot and rallying around how do we get out of this can unlock unbelievable energy too, so long as we're not willfully blind to the situation we're in, where we're talking ourselves in that it'll be fine. That's when we've seen a lot of organizations fail or problems aren't sorted out over a period of time.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I guess it's all about balance, isn't it? Like we talked earlier on about, you can't be on it all the time. You can't be innovative all of the time. And in everything in life, there is balance to be struck to have success. And we are reaching, I can't believe that's gone that quickly. There's about 12 questions that I feel like I need to be asking, but the enforced rules of the podcast is 30 minutes only. So inevitably we're going to, I was going to say drag the guys from Dragonfish on, but I think they love coming on. So I'm sure we're going to get them on again. Just before though we wrap up, I want to kind of do like a wrapper question, if that's all right. And I'll start with you, Niall. Is there anything for those listeners listening in today, if you want to leave somebody with one kind of nugget around this idea of culture, positivity, productivity, energy, is there anything that you think, if you take one thing away from this fantastic conversation, I hope you take lots of interesting things from this conversation today, but if you're going to do one thing, do this, that you'd recommend our listeners think about?
That's a tough one. But I actually, as I was talking, I hadn't realised the power of thinking about doing goals well. That's the takeaway from me from this conversation, just talking about it and thinking about it. So many organizations can do that better. Like, how do you unlock energy through superb goal setting, which is linked to a clear vision and purpose? That would be my one challenge and opportunity. Andree?
So I think my one thing about strengthening, I suppose, energy within an organization is making people feel really valued. Because when people feel valued and when we're celebrating what people are doing, that's contagious, right? People like to hear good news stories. So actually, I would increase the valuing of others in an organisation.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Jess, just to wrap us up.
I focused on companies to encourage teams and individuals to start to understand themselves better, how they work and how they work as a team, to improve collaboration and ensure you get the most out of your organisation.
Lovely. Thank you very much. We are out of time for today, but as I said, we will bring the guys from Dragonfish on to do a bit more soapboxing, because hopefully listening into this podcast, you've got your own levels of positive energy that you can take from this. If you take that, then that's certainly beneficial for us, certainly. So Niall, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Great to be on.
Great to have you on. Andree, likewise, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks so much for inviting us.
And then finally, last but not least, wonderful co-host Jess. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Chris.
Podcast debut Jess. You'll also be coming on more often. You can, of course, get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can access our back catalogue. It's lacepartners.co.uk/podcast. We also do insights. So that's /insights. And you'll see our podcasts, but you'll also see white papers, research that we do, videos. We've got a lot of content that we write as well. Sometimes we take some of the nuggets from our podcasts and we turn them into written content that you can listen to as well. I mean, we do other reference points as well. But from myself, from Niall, from Andree, and from Jess, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you next time on the HR on the Offensive podcast. Bye-bye.